Ferrari GTC4 Lusso T, 2017, review. This is another new four-seater Ferrari? I'm confused. Midway through 2016, the four-seat, all-wheel drive V12 Ferrari FF was superseded by the GTC4 Lusso, or GTC4 Lusso if you follow Ferrari's spacebar-phobic naming convention, with a comprehensively restyled body and enough changes within it, including four-wheel steering, to warrant an entire name change. Now there's this turbocharged V8 version, the GTC4 Lusso T, although Ferrari would have it that its character is so different from the V12 that it should be thought of as a separate model altogether rather than a variant. Fundamentally, though, it's the same machine at its core. What's the story behind the Ferrari GTC4 Lusso T? Ferrari tells us the Lusso T has come about entirely as a result of customer feedback. The FF brought a different, wider-ranging group of customers to Maranello, with a younger average age. Within this wider group, it's found a younger still subsect, think 35 to 40, rather than the traditional 50-plus Ferrari demographic, who would prefer to travel further between fuel stops, rarely drive in areas with low grip conditions and thus don't need or want all-wheel drive, and would like a more involving, neutral handling balance, albeit one still geared towards comfort. They're more likely to drive their Ferrari daily, predominantly in urban areas, and they regularly carry passengers. With that in mind, there's a sound business case for transplanting the talented turboed V8 from the 488 and California T, especially for markets such as China, where heavy tax penalties for engines in excess of 4 liters can hugely inflate the V12 GTC4's list price. What about the plain, T-less V12 GTC4 Lusso? Will that continue as before? That carries on unchanged, with the same 680 bhp, 514 pounds-foot 6.3-liter V12 and all-wheel drive system. The Lusso T carries some inherent advantages over its bigger-hearted brother, with more easily accessible low to mid-range torque, and lighter overall weight, although only by around 55 kilograms. Blame the turbocharged engine's extra ancillaries, plumbing and fluids. More pertinently, weight distribution shifts further to the rear, with a front-back split of 46 hours 54 minutes. That's enabled faster steering response, less understeer and reduced body roll, with the standard fit four-wheel steering system helping to make the car less nervous at the limit than it would be otherwise. In theory, the best of both worlds. Are there many differences between the V8 engine in the Lusso T and the one in the Ferrari 488 or Cali T? New copper alloyed con rods and pistons, with twin cooling oil jets, a redesigned intercooler, a new intake system and a bigger bore, differently arranged exhaust layout which coils its manifold runners into equal lengths for the best possible response and a fruitier sound. Compared with the more frenetic 488, it's been tuned for reduced NVH and lower overall noise levels. With the same 91-liter fuel tank as the V12 Lusso, mileage from a full brim increases by around 30% thanks to the combined reduction in thrust from the smaller engine and drive-less front axle. And during our lengthy test, over a variety of roads and speeds, the fuel gauge dropped encouragingly slowly, for a Ferrari. How does the Ferrari GTC4 Lusso T feel to drive? Big. This is a very long, very wide car, although one that's surprisingly easy to maneuver in town, and it takes a while to shrink around you on the move. But when it does, it's spectacularly good to drive. As on the V12 GTC4 Lusso, Magnaride adaptive dampers are standard, and they deal with large bumps and mid-corner surface changes with almost spooky ease. It's not quite so good at insulating smaller surface imperfections, most likely a function of the 20-in wheels, but body control is impeccable. As is the wont of modern-era Ferraris, the steering is very fast, but not quite as ultra-sensitive as the 488 helm. It's a well-resolved setup in the GTC4, reassuringly unflighty at the straight-ahead for motorway work, but a quick flex of your palms is all it takes to introduce the car to a corner, and it's remarkably stable once loaded up. Likewise front-end grip. I've driven few cars with such a positive front end, so responsive and gray as to feel like a slot car guide connected to the tarmac. Does it still sound good? Even Ferrari personnel willingly acknowledge the 6.3 V12 makes a more charismatic sound, but they're proud of the work they've done to make the V8 far more tuneful than most turbos. An electronically controlled bypass valve helps the Lusso T avoid being antisocial on startup and when driven in urban environs, and opens fully in sport mode. It's a quieter and, subjectively, more guttural-sounding engine than in the 488, and its relatively low voice sometimes makes it feel as if you're going slower than you really are. The 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox is keen to get to top gear as soon as possible in auto mode, and can be slow to change down. The large, column-mounted paddle shift gears about as fast as you can think in manual mode, however, and won't veto downshift from high revs.